Hi there, and welcome back to 1 in 20. Today we're going to be going through the age-old question of what should you do when you grow up? Do you want to be an inventor, a scholar, find inner peace, devote yourself to a religion, beat something to within an inch of its life with your bare hands? Well, today we're going to be going over the playable classes in 5e so that you can find the job that's right for you. And we're rolling. So in D&D 5e, there are 13 playable classes that you can choose from. Only 12 of them are in the Player's Handbook. But this video is going to give you a brief description of each of those classes, some inspiration on how to play them, and the kind of play styles that they suit, just in case you wanted to give them a go. So first on our list is the Artificer. Artificers are a mixture of science and magic, where some are born with an innate ability or make a pact with an otherworldly being, or just spend years of their lives hunched over books in a library. Artificers is the kind of person who think, you know what would be really cool? A pair of boots that let you jump 60 foot in a single step. Artificers have access to many of the same spells as wizards, which give them a lot of versatility compared to most other spellcasters. And on top of that, they also have some really cool abilities of their own. If you want to build a robotic dog to be your companion on your journeys, go for it. Just ask Dave from our campaign Ravis the Lost World. If you want to build a suit of power armor so that you can fly through the sky, go for it. Be Iron Man. If you want a little bag of little robotic creatures to do all of your little day-to-day tasks, build them. It really is up to your own imagination. Artificers start with proficiency in light and medium armors as well as shields. They have proficiency with simple weapons, tinkering tools, and another artisan tool of your choice. They're proficient with constitution and intelligence saving throws. A primary stat for an artificer is most likely going to be intelligence, because that's how you're going to be able to build all of the cool gadgets that come to mind. Next on the list is the Barbarian. Now, the Barbarians are your classic me dumb but me hit really hard kind of character. The kind who would go running straight into a fight with whatever weapon they're carrying, with the pretty confident knowledge that only one person is getting out of that fight alive, and it's going to be them. Barbarians are extra tough. They have a d12 hit dice, which is the highest hit die out of all classes in 5e. And on top of that, they've also got the ability to rage, which is where they basically say that I am too mad to feel pain right now, and ignore half of the damage from most non-magical attacks. They're that little bit more savage and primal, which kind of has its own charm, right? They're also one of the few classes that gets a base increase to their armor class without having to wear armor, making them even more difficult to attack, even if they don't seem like they should be. Barbarians start with proficiency with light armor, medium armor, and shields, all types of weapons. They have no tool proficiencies, and are proficient with saving throws of strength and constitution. A barbarian's primary attribute is probably going to be strength or constitution, depending on whether or not you want to hit harder or be able to take more damage. Next, we're at the bard. Now, if you've ever heard of D&D stories before coming onto this video, there's a high chance that you've probably heard about the bard seducing whatever big bad evil guy the DM has thrown at them and making the entire encounter turn into a bit of a different kind of session. And that's because bards are the literal rock stars of the D&D world. Be they famous actors, a world-renowned mime artist, or even just a humble folk singer, accompanying his reluctant companion singing songs about his great feats. A bard brings the art to the party. In terms of proficiencies, bards start with proficiency with light armor, simple weapons, and a few martial weapons. They start with a proficiency in 3 different instruments, and proficiency saving throws in dexterity and charisma. A bard's primary stat is going to be either dexterity or charisma, probably charisma, because that's how you're going to seduce all those big bad evil guys in the first place. Moving on to the Cleric. Now, the Cleric is the priest who decided that the best way to spread the word of their god is through a mixture of preaching and sermons, and by going around and beating people around the head until they see the light. A cleric is usually the designated healer of the group, having the best access to healing spells out of all of the classes in 5e, as well as some cool abilities of their own depending on what god it is that they worship. These abilities, as well as a decent armor, mean that there's a lot of variety to be had with clerics, meaning that you can play your Holy Crusader however you like. A cleric starts with the proficiency in simple weapons, medium light armor, and shields. They don't start with any tool proficiencies, but have proficiency in wisdom and charisma saving throws. Cleric's primary stat is most likely going to be their wisdom, as that is how they're going to be channeling all of that healing power. Shifting on to the Druid. Have you ever wondered what the love child between Maui and Poison Ivy would be? If you have, look no further than the Druid. Able to commune with nature, talk to trees, turn into animals, a Druid is literally designed for life in the wild. Druids are actually a really unique class, able to switch up their playstyle at a moment's notice. They could be at the back casting off support spells or debuffing the enemies, staying out of the fight as much as possible. But then somebody tries to sneak up on them and attack them, and they transform into a bear and maul the person to death. Because they were stupid enough to think that the Druid was actually an easy target. Now, Druids start with proficiencies in light and medium armour as well as shields. However, it's important to note that Druids will not wear metal armour. So if you want to use a heavier armour in your world, think of cool alternatives, like maybe you've got armour made out of a really old oak tree, or you've fashioned a shield out of stone which you've carved yourself. But whatever it is, speak to your DM and I'm sure you can come up with something. They also start with proficiency in a variety of simple weapons as well as a couple of other types. They have proficiencies with a herbalism kit because, nature. And they have proficiency saving throws in intelligence and wisdom. Your primary stat is most likely going to be wisdom because in addition to that affecting how often you can change your spells, it's also really important to know if you're going to be living out in the forest, which berries are safe to eat and which ones are going to put you in a bad place. Next up, we've got the Fighter. Now, have you ever been faced with the question of whether you should fight, talk or run? If your immediate answer was to draw your sword and scoff like there was ever any choice, then you, my friend, might be a fighter. Fighters are fierce warriors who have honed their skills of battle to such a point that most of us would never even consider getting there. They've trained with all manner of dangerous weapons and specialised in certain skills and abilities that can really turn the tide of combat mid-fight, all with the goal of becoming the world's most renowned fighter that has ever existed. Fighters start with proficiency in all armours and shields. Of course, remember to wear some of the heavy armour, you will have to have a minimum strength score. They start with proficiency in all weapons, but because of how long they've spent training in that, they never picked up the time to learn how to use any tools, so you don't actually start with any tool proficiencies. Saving throws, just like the Barbarian, in strength and constitution. Your primary stat for a fighter is probably going to be either your strength or your dex, and that's depending on what kind of a fighter you've trained to be. If you wanted to be a giant mountain of a man, swinging a massive two-handed greatsword around with one hand whilst yawning at how easy it is, you're probably going to want to go for strength. If you want to be a nimble fighter, slashing a rapier around so quick that you can carve your name on someone's chest, you're probably going to want to go for dex as your primary stat. But remember, if you do not put your primary stat to strength, it might limit what kind of armor you can wear. Moving on to the monk. Now, sometimes the way to inner peace is through peaceful meditation, giving up all worldly possessions and going and living on a mountain somewhere. Other times it's by bashing a few skulls in. Monks have devoted their lives and souls to the understanding of the universe and becoming one. And unfortunately for many of them, that understanding has led them to believe that the world sucks and it needs to be corrected. So they've gone to do it. Monks are all about channeling the body's inner energy, be that into a ki blast to hit an opponent, or by fueling their own muscles with additional energy which shouldn't be there to give them that extra speed or strength boost, or using their inner energy to interact with the world around them. In addition to all of that, they're also a master of the martial arts, giving them a unique combination of attack, defense, and mental fortitude that you don't really see in any of the other classes. So remember, the next time that you see a humble old man who looks like he's just come down from the mountains wearing old robes with a happy smile on his face, he might not be the person you want to pick a fight with. Monks don't start with any armor proficiencies, but similar to the Barbarian, are actually able to get a boost to their base AC without armor. They start with proficiency with simple weapons as well as short swords. They can either have an artisan's tool or a musical instrument, depending on what they spent their free time doing when they weren't meditating, and they have saving throws in strength and dexterity. A monk's primary stat is probably going to be either dex or wisdom, depending on whether or not they spent more time learning how to control their body or their mind. Next on the list, we have the Paladin. Now, a Paladin is a mixture of a fighter and a cleric. Paladins are strong, loyal, and always keep their word. They're really the kind of friends that everybody wants. Paladins are a strong frontline fighter with a great defense and even better attack, thank you Smite, and are even able to heal without the use of spells. But what makes Paladins really special is how they get their powers. Paladins make an oath, which they'll stick to no matter what it takes. Well, most of the time. Be that a god who they pledge to worship, a king and country that they promise to protect, or even a villain that they swear that they will kill no matter what. Paladins use their oath to push them past their normal limits so that they can fulfill their promise, turning that sheer determination into a force which can turn the tide of battle. Paladins start with proficiency in all armour and shields, all weapons, no tool proficiencies, but they get saving throws in wisdom and charisma. A paladin's primary stat will either be strength if you want to focus on hitting hard, constitution if you want to concentrate on helping to defend your friends and being the meat shield, or even charisma if you wanted to focus on being more of a spellcasting role. Next up we have the ranger, sleeking through the forest, tracking down their prey with their animal companion. A ranger is a dangerous hunter to their very bones. Be it a wild beast or a bounty, a ranger will get the job done. Though rangers are usually thought of as like the lone wanderer type, their innate survival skill, primal instincts and magic from their time spent in the wild, as well as a specialised fighting style which normally only the fighters would get, make them a useful asset in any party, be it following a track through some deep dark dungeon, or even just finding food out in the wild. Rangers start with light and medium armor proficiencies as well as with shields. They have proficiency with simple and martial weapons, no tool proficiencies, and proficiencies in dex and strength saving throws. Your primary stat is probably going to be either dex or wisdom, which will either help you with your stealth and attacks, or help your ability to survive out in the wild. Next up, sneaking in, we have the rogue. Now, where the fighter has honed their skills of battle to perfection, a rogue has honed to perfection a skill of less socially acceptable traits. Where others see a locked door, they see an invitation. Thievery, sneaking around, and maybe even assassination. A rogue is a person who has decided what they want to get out of life and aren't going to let anybody else stop them. And if they were going to be a criminal, then they were going to be the best damn criminal that they could be. Now, while rogues might be considered evil in many circumstances, just because they happen to disagree with some people on who the contents of a locked chest belong to or not, they could actually be seeing themselves as doing something more for justice rather than for evil. Maybe they are breaking into a corrupt politician's office to get some intel on them, or they're stealing from the wealthy nobles who have been taxing the poor people so that they can give it back to them. A rogue could just be a really misunderstood guy. Or they could just want everything that everyone else has and don't want to do the hard work of, going to work for it. In a party, the ability to navigate those locks and traps, hide at a moment's notice, could be the difference between life and death, not just for them, but for the rest of the party as well. Because of all of their sneaking around, rogues only start with a proficiency in light armor because you don't want to be caught in something big and heavy when you're trying to run away from someone, or when you're trying to sneak into a locked room without being heard. They have proficiency with simple weapons and a few martial weapons. Obviously, they start with proficiency in thieves' tools, and their saving throws are dexterity and intelligence. Your primary stat for a rogue is probably going to be dexterity, because that's how you're going to be able to pick all of those locks and sneak out of the place in complete silence. Next up we have the first of our three primary magic classes, and we're going to start with the Sorcerer. With magic, Sorcerers are the kind of person that in school were always getting the straight A's despite never having to do any work. I mean, who needs to do hard work when you're just born with natural talent? Not sorcerers, that's who. Born with an innate magical ability from a variety of different ancestors and a direct connection to the magical weave, sorcerers have the ability to shape the world around them in a way that no other class can. Whilst they do not have the same access to spells as many other casters do, their ability to manipulate them to either cast more in a round, or cast them without using certain components, or even just make them more powerful, give them an edge where they're able to use their sheer personality to force their will on others. Sorcerers make magic happen when no one else can. Sorcerers don't actually start with any armor proficiency. They have proficiency with a few different weapons, no tool proficiencies, but they do have proficiency with Constitution and Charisma. Now, Constitution so far on this list has mainly been for those who are in the thick of a fight, which a Sorcerer doesn't really want to be. However, having that means that they are more likely to be able to maintain their concentration spells, which can be a massive difference in the heat of battle. The main stat for a Sorcerer will probably be their Charisma, because that's how they're able to force their personality on others and make their magic work. Next up on our list, we have the Warlock. Now, what do you do if you want magic, but you weren't born with that innate power? Now, you could devote yourself to a god, or you could spend 20 years of your life reading old books, trying to learn the arcane arts. But if neither of those options are feeling particularly great for you, why not just sell your soul to some interdimensional being of your choice, and in exchange get a bit of power from them? Now, Warlocks did exactly that. They make a pact with a powerful patron who for some reason has decided to graciously grant them a portion of their power. No worship necessary. With that, they gain a limited access to spells so that they can pretend to be the natural talent they always wish that they could be. But remember, that favour is now owed. And in your campaign, your GM might then call on that favour and have your patron come and ask you for a favour which you're going to have to pay back. But who knows, that might lead to more powers down the line. Now, an important thing to note with Warlocks is they only get a very small number of spell slots that they can use because the power isn't theirs. But the benefit of that is because it's not theirs, it means that it recharges faster. Where all other classes get their spells back at the end of a long rest, Warlocks are actually able to get it back off after a short rest. So as long as you're taking rest regularly, you actually might be able to cast more spells than one of the other more naturally gifted spellcasters. Warlocks start with proficiency in light armor. They have simple weapons, no tool proficiencies, and proficiency saving throws in wisdom and charisma. Your primary stat is probably going to be charisma, because you've got to be pretty charismatic to be able to convince such a powerful creature to lend you some of its power in the first place. And finally, we come to the wizard. Now, the wizard is the kind of person who, at college or uni, rather than going out and partying with all of their friends, spends the nights until 3 AM in the library studying so that they could make sure that they ace the test in 7 months' time. A wizard is all about the pursuit of knowledge, and everything else comes second to that. Learning the arcane secrets and the ways of the world can only be found through the oldest and rarest of tomes, scattered across the planet. Wizards are highly intellectual, and they use the knowledge that they've gained from their years of study to shape the world around them using powerful magic. Because of their studies, wizards also have the widest range of spells out of all of the spellcasters, and can literally prepare a different spellbook each day so that they've got access to the spells that they're going to need. If they're going into a deep dungeon, they can make sure they've got the spells for that. If they're going to be wandering around the town square and want to make sure that they get the best deals, they can prepare some spells specifically for that as well. They have such a wide range of versatility that a wizard can be useful in any situation, as long as they've got prep time. Wizards have definitely honed their mind to be as sharp as a sword, where a warrior used a sword. Wizards start, like the sorcerers, with no armor proficiency, a proficiency in a few different types of weapons, no tool proficiencies, and saving throws in intelligence and wisdom. Now, obviously, a wizard's primary stat is most likely going to be intelligence, because you've got to be pretty smart to be able to remember all of those spells in the first place. And there we have it. That's all 13 classes in D&D 5e. If you want to know more about each individual class, keep an eye out on the channel, because in the future we are going to be doing a much more detailed list of each of the 13 classes, giving you a better rundown of what the subclasses are, how to play them, and the unique abilities that you get from playing each class. And remember, if you've seen this and you decided that you don't want to go with our recommendations of primary stats or the playstyles for them, you can play them however you want. Have the super strong wizard who just happens to like reading and learn magic as a byproduct. Or maybe you wanted to play a really charismatic druid, somebody who, despite living in the wild for their entire life, happens to be a great people person. It's really up to you and how you want to play your game. But with that, thank you so much for watching, guys, and I hope to see you next time. Roll well.